Well, hey there, everybody. It's your boy, Mr. Perry, and here we are, Unit 5, Lesson 8. Today, we're going to talk about scope for variables and how we can access variables from different portions in our program code. So, let's go ahead and hop right into it with our vocab here. When we talk about scope with variables, scope refers to where a variable can be used once it's been declared. And in our class, there are three types of scope. There's what's called class level, which is a variable that can be used throughout the entire class file. There's what's called method level, which is a variable that can only be used within the method, enclosed by the curly braces. And then there's a third kind called block level, which is a variable that can only be used within that specific block of code, once again, which is enclosed by curly braces. So scope just basically refers to where a variable can be used, where it can be accessed. So let's start by talking about what is class level. All right, so variables that are declared at the top of the class file, so your instance variables as well as your static variables, those can be accessed throughout the entire class. So here we've got our vehicle class, which has wheels, seats, and then a static variable, vehicle count. So wheels, seats, and vehicle count can be used throughout the entire class. And so if you were looking at this and saying, okay, which of the variables featured on this slide have class level scope, you would really just be focusing on your instance variables. Because wheels, seats, and vehicle count, you can see, are being used down here in the constructor, and of course they would be used in your get methods, your set methods, and maybe even other methods. So throughout your entire class file, you can refer to wheels, seats, and vehicle count, and you are good to go. All right. But then there's what's called method level, and those are variables that are declared as formal parameters in a method header, or if they are declared inside a method's curly brace, that means they are only accessible inside that method. So once again, you can read through this slide here, and you can see we've got variables and we've got more variables. So which variables on this slide have method level scope? Well, again, you'd be looking for what are the variables that are declared as parameters, or maybe declared inside the method's curly braces. Well, I see two variables here and here, both of which are parameters. So new wheels and new seats can be used inside this method, but that's it. They can't be used in any other method or in any other part of the program code. New wheels is referred to here, new seats is referred to here, and that's okay because that's inside the curly braces for that constructor. All right, so let's look at a couple more here. There are two more methods being displayed for you here. So which variables have method level scope in these two methods? And again, you're probably looking at the formal parameters, which would make sense. Wheel count is being updated here. So wheel count is has method level method level scope here. And then the same thing with seat count. Seat count is your formal parameter, and it's being updated here. So again, seat count is accessible within that method, but that is it. So let's have a look at these two here and see if you can figure out why would these two methods result in an error. Feel free to pause the video and see if you can figure that out. I'm going to go ahead and assume that you paused that video. And so we've got, wheel count is a local variable for this method here. Seat count is a local variable for this method here. So wheel count down here cannot be used. You can't declare a new method and try to access the parameter, which is a local variable for this method up here, in a completely different method. The only way you could access a variable called wheel count in this method is if you actually declared the variable inside the method and then went to use it. But in that case, it would not be the same wheel count as the one up here because this wheel count again is going to be local to that particular variable. All right, well now we have what's called block level scope. And so block level just basically means loop control variables are only accessible inside the loop's curly braces. So if you read through what is featured here on this slide, see if you can locate the one variable that has block level scope. So in order to answer that question, you're looking for loop control variables. Well, here we go. We've got our for loop down here for int I equals 0 as long as I is less than num times I plus plus. So that means I can be used inside of this for loop, but that's it. So there you go. That's block level scope is basically, loop control variables, which may be inside a method like you see right here. Anyways, let's look at another one here. Let's see if we can find some other variables that have block level scope. I'm going to encourage you to pause the video and see if you can go through and find any variable on this slide that has block level scope. All right, so on this one, I don't see any loop control variables. However, I do see an if statement. It says if vehicle count is greater than 100, and here we are inside this block declaring a new variable, int bonus is equal to that, and then vehicle count plus equals bonus. So here we are inside a block. It's not a loop control, but it is it's an if statement, it's a selection statement, and again, it's between two curly braces. So anytime you declare a new variable inside two curly braces, whether it's a loop control variable or whether it's a selection statement, again, those have block level scope. All right, now why all of this matters? Well, let's see. Class level variables are called global variables since they are available throughout the entire class. Method and block level variables are called local variables, meaning they can only be accessed within the curly braces for the method or the block. And if you try to access a local variable from outside of its scope, it's going to result in an error. So that's why it really matters, is just understanding, when you name variables certain things, where those names are actually allowed to be used. So you don't want to, end up in a situation like this, where you're going to end up with an error. We've got, down here a static method that sets this new variable a to be 10, int a equals 10. Up here in a completely different method, in the main method, you're trying to print it. Well, again, this is a local variable to this method. It is not available out there. So that's going to end up giving you an error like this. And it'll usually say something like cannot find a symbol. So if you get that error message, then that's a good indication that you violated scope. All right. So again, just reviewing, class level scope is for instance variables inside a class. Method level scope is for local variables, including your parameters inside of a method. And then block level scope is for loop control variables as well as other local variables that are defined within a set of curly braces. So scope is defined where a variable can be accessed or used. Local variables can be declared in the body of constructors and methods. These variables can only be used within the constructor or the method and cannot be declared to be public or private. When there is a local variable with the same name as an instance variable, the variable name will refer to the local variable instead of the instance variable. So the local variable always takes precedence. Unless you say this dot and then name of the instance variable, in which case it knows you're referring to the instance variable. And then finally, formal parameters and variables declared in a method or a constructor can only be used within that method or constructor. All right, guys, well, there you go. Pretty quick one. Be sure to leave a question or a comment, and I'll see you in class.